We took one high-mileage engine and ran 3 oil grades through it back-to-back. 0W-20, 5W-30, 5W-40. Same engine, same conditions. A lab report after every oil change. The owner's manual insists on one. Veteran mechanics swear by another, and thousands of owners switch to the third once the ticking starts. The lab report showed one oil protecting this worn engine noticeably better than the others. Another lost ground much sooner than its change interval suggested. By the end of the test, one choice stood above the rest. Section 1. The rules change after 100,000 miles. Every oil debate you've ever watched? It was secretly about new engines. Tight tolerances, fresh rings, perfect seals. But those arguments, they completely stop applying the day your odometer crosses into 6 figures. Think about it. Inside a worn engine, the bearing clearances have opened up. The piston rings, they just don't seal combustion the way they did at 30,000 miles. Oil that once stayed put, now it's slipping past surfaces that used to trap it. Picture a garden hose with your thumb over the end. New engine, tight thumb, strong pressure. Worn engine, loose thumb, and that exact same water pressure turns into a sad little dribble. Because of that, the oil's job completely changes. At 110,000 miles, oil stops being just a friction reducer, it becomes a gap filler. It's literally compensating for metal that no longer fits together the way the engineers drew it. But that sticker under your hood, it never got the memo. It still lists the exact grade chosen when every clearance was absolutely perfect. Which raises the one question nobody at the dealership ever wants to answer. Is the factory oil really still the right oil for a worn engine? Well, we decided to stop guessing. Section 2. How we tested. Our test mule? A 2.5-liter Toyota 4-cylinder with a whopping 158,000 miles on it. It's the exact kind of engine sitting in millions of RAV4s and Camrys right now. It came to us with a faint little cold start tick and a habit of drinking about a quart of oil every 2,500 miles. In other words, a completely normal high-mileage engine. We ran 3 consecutive 5,000-mile intervals. Same driver, same daily commute mix of city crawl and highway runs, even the exact same filter brand at every single change. We used full synthetic across the board too, so nobody could blame base oil quality. The only variable we touched was viscosity. Interval 1 got 0W-20, Interval 2 got 5W-30, and Interval 3 got 5W-40. After each drain, a sample went straight to an oil analysis lab, the exact same used oil testing that fleet operators and engine builders rely on. We're talking wear metals, viscosity retention, fuel dilution, the works. Then, we checked our numbers against published oil chemistry data, just to make absolutely sure every conclusion in this video stands on more than just one engine. Section 3. What those numbers actually promise. Quick decoder here, because the bottle is totally lying to you by omission. That first number with the W, it just tells you how easily the oil moves on a freezing cold morning. Lower means faster flow at startup. That's it. The second number, well, that's the thickness once the engine is fully hot. But there's a third number the bottle never shows you, and it's the one that actually decides whether your bearings live or die. It's called high temperature, high shear viscosity. Think of it as the thickness of the oil cushion your crankshaft is literally floating on. When the oil is scorching hot and being absolutely crushed between moving parts. Industry standards require a 20-weight oil to hold a cushion of at least 2.6 units under that punishment. A 30-weight has to hold 2.9, and a 40 grade like 5W-40 has to hold 3.5. They sound like small numbers, but they have massive consequences. Because in a worn engine with widened clearances, a thin cushion carries a second danger past weak protection. It can literally escape out the sides of the bearing entirely. Now, watch what that actually did in the real world. Section 4. Interval 1. 0W-20. The oil your manual swears by. On cold mornings, 0W-20 was absolutely untouchable. It built oil pressure faster than anything else we ran. And let's face it, the most destructive seconds of any engine's day are those first ones right after key on. It also posted the best fuel economy of the entire test. Look, if this engine had 40,000 miles on it, The video would end right here, but it doesn't. It has 158,000. And the lab report? Man, it read like a total confession. The viscosity at drain had sheared down completely out of grade. Between mechanical shearing and the fuel dilution that direct injection engines always dump into their oil, our 0W-20 was testing closer to a 16 weight by the end of the interval. That is an oil grade so thin most owners have never even seen it on a shelf. And yet, it was the only thing standing between those worn bearings and each other. Iron and aluminum readings came back elevated, roughly double what analysis labs consider comfortable for this engine family. Consumption got way worse too, a quart roughly every 2,000 miles by the end, because a thinned-out oil just slips past tired rings even faster. And that faint cold start tick? By the last 1,000 miles, it wasn't so faint anymore. Nothing failed, nothing exploded. But that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. The engine ran completely fine, while the numbers said it was literally sanding itself down.
Section 5. Who 0W-20 was really written for. Time for the part of the story your owner's manual completely leaves out. Automakers didn't move to ultra-thin oil because engines suddenly demanded it. Absolutely not. They moved because federal fuel economy rules fine manufacturers across their entire fleet, and thin oil buys back a tiny 1% to 2% at highway speeds. But listen, multiply a single mile per gallon across millions of vehicles, and you're talking about regulatory money, credits, and penalties in the hundreds of millions. Your engine's long-term health? It was never even the variable in that equation. And the proof? Well, it's printed in other countries. Take the exact same Toyota engine we tested, sell it overseas, and the manual over there openly lists 5W-30 and thicker grades as totally approved. Identical metal, identical clearances, the only thing that changed at the border was the regulation. Plus, the manual only has to be right for the warranty period. Toyota's obligation to that engine ended around 60,000 miles. Yours ends when you sell it. Those are two very different finish lines, and only one of them was considered when 0W-20 went on your oil cap. Section 6. Interruption 2. 5W-30, the grade they took away from you. We drained that completely sheared out 0W-20, filled it up with 5W-30, and wow, the engine started answering questions we hadn't even asked yet. Within the very first week, that annoying cold start tick shortened from several seconds to barely 1. See, cold flow on a 5W-30 is nearly identical to 0W-20 in pretty much every climate that doesn't involve actual block heaters. So that startup penalty everyone is so terrified of, it simply didn't show up. What did show up was a much thicker cushion at operating temperature, literally filling up the clearances the factory oil was just leaking right through. And the lab confirmed exactly what our dipstick already suspected. Consumption plummeted from a quart every 2,000 miles down to a quart every 4,500. Viscosity at drain was still safely, comfortably inside 30-grade territory, totally shrugging off the exact same shear and fuel dilution that absolutely gutted the 0W-20. Even better, wear metals dropped by more than a third against interval 1. Same engine, same commute, same 5,000 miles. The cost of all that protection? Well, fuel economy dipped by a tiny few tenths of a mile per gallon. Over a full year of average driving, that's roughly $40. Meanwhile, a timing chain and phaser job on this exact engine runs anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. Yeah, you definitely do not need a calculator for this one. Section 7. Initial 3. 5W-40. The hammer. Now, if Ficker always fixed everything, then 5W-40 should have completely embarrassed both of these oils. And look, in 2 categories, it actually did. Once it was fully hot, its cushion was easily the deepest of the entire test. And under sustained highway load, its viscosity barely even budged at drain, making it the most shear-proof result we recorded by far. For an engine towing a heavy load through a brutal Phoenix summer, that stability is genuinely worth paying for. But our worn-out Toyota wasn't towing through Phoenix, it was just commuting. And man, 5W-40 made it pay a real price for protection it never even got to use. Cold starts? They turned flat out ugly. The very first seconds after key on brought back a nasty rattle that the 5W-30 had already cured, because thick, cold oil just takes longer to reach the very top of the engine, and cold starts are precisely where high mileage wear concentrates. Fuel economy took the biggest hit of the entire test, more than a full mile per gallon down from interval 1. And there is a massive hidden trap in modern engines. Variable valve timing runs on oil pressure fed through passages barely wider than a pencil lead, completely sized around thin oil. Feed them a heavy 40 weight in a chilly engine, and the system responds late. Guess what? That's exactly how a bad oil choice starts throwing check engine codes. The wear metals? They came back low, but honestly, no better than the 5W-30s. It was all drag and absolutely no bonus. This oil is a heavy-duty work boot, and we were wearing it to the office. Section 8. The scoreboard. Let's line them all up after 15,000 completely identical miles. 0W-21 cold starts in fuel economy, but then it totally bled viscosity, doubled our wear readings, and let consumption climb way up. 5W-40 won heat stability, but then it punished every single cold morning, dragged down our mileage, and delivered wear numbers that were no better than the middle grade. Then there's 5W-30. It held its viscosity, it cut consumption clean in half, it dropped wear metals by over a third, and it only gave up absolute pocket change at the pump to do it. Look, you have two extremes here, and one oil that was actually built for the engine we own in the real world. Section 9. At high mileage, 5W-30 is the clear winner. And it's not because thicker is always better. Absolutely not. Interval 3 already completely killed that myth. 5W-30 won because a worn engine has one very specific problem: clearances that grew, guarded by an oil grade that never did. The 30-weight cushion is deep enough to fill up what 158,000 miles opened up, yet it's still light enough to keep cold starts and tiny oil passages perfectly happy. It held its grade against brutal shear and fuel dilution, instead of just collapsing into a flimsy 16-weight. It sealed those tired rings well enough to literally halve our consumption, and it did all of it for the mere price of a tank or two of gas per year. Here's the one line that should really stick with you. The factory grade protects the engine Toyota built. 5W-30 protects the engine that 158,000 miles rebuilt. Those are just no longer the same engine, and only one of them is parked in your driveway tonight. Section 10. What no oil can save. Now, time for an honesty beat, because this channel is definitely not in the miracle business. If your engine is already burning a quart of oil every single 1,000 miles, man, that's worn rings or bad valve seals. That is a mechanical problem wearing an oil costume. Thicker oil might muffle it, it might slow it down, but it's just going to send you the repair bill later with a lot of interest. Loud knocking under load, metal glitter shining on the dipstick, the oil pressure light flickering at idle. Look, those engines need a real mechanic. Pouring 5W-40 over that kind of evidence just delays the inevitable appointment. Viscosity buys worn engines time, but it has never, not even once, bought them new parts. Section 11. Match the oil to your odometer. Are you under 100,000 miles with absolutely no consumption and no weird noises? Look, just run what the cap says. The clearances are still tight, the thin oil still fits perfectly, and those fuel savings are real. But are you past 100,000 miles with rising oil consumption, hot climate driving, or annoying cold start tick? Move up to 5W-30 and just watch what happens over your next two intervals. Check your manual first, and always remember that overseas trick: if your exact engine is approved for thicker grades in other markets, the metal can absolutely handle it here too. Now, save that heavy 5W-40 for the total outliers. We're talking sustained heavy towing, brutal desert heat, or an older engine that's already loose enough to literally knock on a 30-weight. It is a legitimate tool, and if that's your life, just verify your engine allows it and use it with total confidence. But listen, there is one habit that completely beats every single grade on this list: shorter intervals. A worn engine contaminates oil so much faster than a new one.
5,000 miles, quality full synthetic, every single time. 3 oils went into one tired engine. The thin one wore it, the thick one taxed it, and the middle one bought it years. Check your odometer, then check your oil cap, and ask whether those two numbers still belong together. Tell us in the comments what mileage you're at and what grade you're running. The answers are about to get interesting.